So, Jiro's pretty cool. What's up, ladies and gents? Noli here. This is my Yakuza character pack first impressions. Now, it's actually out. It came out a little earlier on this evening. I've been playing it almost since it was released, and I've been having an absolute ball. I'm not going to jump to any massive conclusions just yet, but I'm going to tentatively say this is my favourite character pack, and Jiro is pretty awesome. So, I was slightly surprised that Jiro, as you saw just before, the brand new Japanese hoster, actually only speaks in Japanese, and it was funny to me because they gave him all this backstory in this awesome artistic trailer for him, and then he comes out and he's actually kind of an over-the-top comedic trope. I hesitate to say. A lot of his voice lines are very anime, they're very exaggerated, loud, funny to listen to, and I think they were designed so that there are particular words that those of you who are fans of a lot of Japanese culture will be able to pick out, and they might make you smile. I'm cut in half by this one. I love it, and he's so much fun to play, and it's silly, and it fits in probably best with the Payday universe, but I also, for a while, thought we were going to get a deeper, darker character who maybe was a little more serious. You know, there's two ways of doing it, serious or crazy with Japan, and they went crazy, and I'll be honest, I'm totally behind that. And the voice acting's great. Don't worry about that. The voice acting is a great part of it. I just wish there was some English dialogue lines, I'll be honest. Call me a traditionalist, but that's my only gripe with Jiro as a character. Other than that, physically, visually, he's designed brilliantly. And, you know, you've already heard about the audio. I love it. So let's move on to the weapon. You're seeing throughout this, there's 3 parts gameplay. 2 parts with the micro Uzi. 1 with a slightly bigger focus on the brand new Katana melee weapon. And there's another short bit of gameplay where I'm playing solo, trying to get the Yakuza Perk deck to work out. And hopefully you can see what it's good for, what its pretty obvious flaws are, and if it's actually any good. We'll get onto that later, but I was surprised by the Yakuza Perk deck. But yeah, Micro Uzi. Surprisingly, they've managed to bring another awesome, unique weapon. Considering there was already an Uzi in the game, I was slightly worried about the Micro Uzi, but everything I said slightly earlier in the video did come to fruition. You can customize this thing to be a pretty all-around solid DPS SMG, or it can be a versatile crit, silence, any of the above. I'm using silence, crit, dodge, all those together on this build, and it works awesomely. Capping out something like 35 damage, ridiculous fire rate as I've already mentioned, not bad accuracy and stability in the end if you modify it correctly, and a good enough concealment to even run the Katana and still have all my boosts for dodge and crit. So that's awesome, it fits that build perfectly. But another thing it does, and the reason why I think it's a really unique SMG, is you can get it up to 32 concealment. Now, I'm not sure whether this was actually intended. I've talked a little about this. The attachment which claims to raise its concealment by 1 appears to actually raise it by 3, up from 29 to the max of 32. Now, what this means is some builds that previously weren't a concealment option, crit builds, dodge builds with different, bigger looking weapons, now are an option. And that's awesome. I really hope this was intended, because it makes so much sense. The Micro Uzi is definitely a very concealable weapon. But it means that builds like the minigun build, now that has full crit, full dodge. Amazing. And for that reason, the Micro Uzi is going to be one of the top 3 SMGs in the game. It does compete with the Cross Vertex submachine gun, the Chris Vector, in terms of damage. It certainly competes with the Cobra, my personal favourite, in terms of utility. So it's certainly up there. Really good weapon, and I'm really happy that Jiro brought this with him. Certainly worth trying out. Now the melee weapon. You know, with these I normally don't go on about the melee weapon for too long. The hockey stick, for example, with Sokol. You know, who doesn't like bashing someone over the head with a hockey stick? I like it as much as the next guy, but there's not much to say. Its stats weren't crazy different. Just a hockey stick, really. But then the Katana came out, and you got to talk about Katana. Every game has a Katana as a melee weapon somewhere, and this one did not disappoint. Visually, it's amazing. The sound effects, Jiro's melee sound effects are some of my favourites, and they go so hand in hand with the Katana. But I feel that from now on, you're probably not going to use much else. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's the best melee weapon in the game. Really strong. It's turned melee around for me. Melee is never going to be a tool that's viable on Deathwish. We've all resigned ourselves to that fact. Me in particular, who is a massive fan of the playstyle. But this Katana is something else on Overkill. You can expect a 2-shot kill on every single enemy that isn't a special on Overkill difficulty. So all the greens, 2-shot kill. That's awesome. It's not a slow swinger, don't have to charge it, just swing away. Now if you do charge it, you can expect a 1-shot kill. Tasers, almost cloakers, I believe. Every other special, obviously not bulldozers, you don't want to be meleeing them. But its damage is ridiculous. It's the perfect melee weapon. It means that all the melee weapons builds I've done previously are just that much better. The only reason I could ever see you swapping this weapon out is if you were going to use a full concealment build, in which case you may have to go back to something like the shocker or the trench knife. But this thing actually has really high concealment anyway, so I don't know what you're worried about. I think it's got 27 base. So, just an incredible weapon. The Katana is... It might just be my favourite part of this DLC. The character's great. The Micro Uzi's great. But the Katana is something else. And the melee is always the tertiary part of one of these character packs. You know, it's a little cosmetic change, but this Katana, very, very powerful. I'm going to stop raving about that right now. We got one last thing to talk about, and that is, of course, the Perk deck, the Yakuza Perk deck, which I mentioned, not as weak as I thought it was. Now, I've not had enough chance to really try this out. I've only tried it out for 2 heists, I believe, both on Overkill, but both were very, very successful. It might be that I'm using strong weapons around it, obviously the AA-12. That's you know, pretty good shotgun, and the Striker secondary. So I'm not going to deny the weapons I'm using in the gameplay are very strong, and it might be one of the reasons this perk deck looks viable, and any perk deck would be doing alright. But the playstyle, while it might not be the best, and while it's a difficult one to get into, is really rewarding. With the Advanced Combined Tactical Vest, I actually am regenerating my health, my armor I should say, incredibly quickly. If I had Hotslot, I could tell you the exact time. I don't have Hotslot on during this recording. But it's fast. It's noticeably fast. And so you can keep it at low health. And you can keep getting the usage of Berserker, which is massive. Having my ranged weapon doing 75% additional damage through Berserker is pretty good. And then combined with Overkill, those multipliers are crazy. But at one point, I'm actually doing about 225% more with my melee weapon. So instead of swinging for 100, the Katana's swinging for 300, which is insane. And yeah, I have a fair amount of success. And so if you're going to use Berserker, one of these crazy little niche builds, which aren't going to work on Deathwish but are a lot of fun on Overkill, this skill tree is a dream come true. So specialized, and I imagine so few people are going to get real use out of it. But I actually really enjoyed my time with it. It's really good against, you know, tasers, bulldozers, all the standard ground troops. Where it really falls apart is when the snipers come out, because you can't easily deal with them, and you get 1 or 2 shot. First shot straight through the armor, and then you've got no health to back yourself up. So that's the massive flaw. The other flaw is obviously that it's fiddly to work around. You got to get down to at least 50%. But when you're using Berserker, you got to get down to 25% or lower, really, to get any full use out of it, which is kind of awkward to set up. If you get it just to 50%, the problem is, of course, going to be then they have to get through your pretty heavy armor to get it any lower and get any use out of Berserker. So it's fiddly to use, but when it works out, when this perk deck is going good, it's going very good. When it's going bad, it's going exceptionally bad. Let's put it that way. But With this, the second you get knocked down by a cloaker, for example, then revived by a teammate, you're going to have that already kicking in because you're going to be below 50% health. And with that, that means you're not going to get down again immediately because you're going to be regenning incredibly quickly. The movement speed is really nice. I noticed it, I'll be honest, even though it's only 10%. So not a bad perk deck, and it really rounds off what I think is one of the most well-polished and enjoyable character packs. Can't recommend Jiro enough. I would actually just... I don't do this very often. I'm always really tentative with my recommendations. But yeah, really consider picking this up. If you've got $5 in your Steam wallet and you normally like to wait for the sales for these Payday DLCs, treat yourself. This one is a phenomenally enjoyable one. Again, I know you guys might be getting bored of character packs, but Jiro is a little something special, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it as much as I have. These are, as ever, first impressions. You gotta take them with a grain of salt. Sometimes my eyes can be clouded by the hype of the character. No, I don't feel that's the case with this one. So do wait for a fuller and further review in the future. I might be taking a look at particular builds and seeing how this DLC can be incorporated in your standard everyday Payday play. So that's it for this video, guys. Hope you have enjoyed. Good night. I'll be back on tomorrow playing around with the Yakuza character pack.